Hello everyone and welcome to not one but two very interesting games from the round of 16 Speed Chess Championship tournament. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave versus HANS, Moke and Niemann. It is the last match of the round of 16, and then we have all of the quarterfinalists. So we'll see what happens. I've chosen one game from the 5+1 section and also one from the 3+1 section. Hopefully you guys will enjoy them. I found the two to be the most interesting. So let's check it out. This one, MVL has the white pieces. It's from the 5+1 section. And MVL opens with pawn to e4. We have pawn to e5 by HANS, knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to b5. The Ruy Lopez is on the board. Knight to f6, and now castles kingside, inviting the capture on e4, which HANS goes for. Knight captures on e4, and now pawn to d4. We have knight back to d6, and bishop captures on c6. So this has all been played before, nothing new here. Millions and millions of games in the database with this exact same position. Knight to f5, queen captures on d8, king captures, and now pawn to h3. It's a very analyzed position, and there are many moves you can play here. Knight to c3 is the most popular one. You could also give a check with rook to d1, h3. Those are the three top options. And now bishop to e7. Top move here for black is considered king to e8, but like I said, anything can be played. Knight to c3 and knight to h4. Knight to h4, offering a trade, knight to h4, capturing, bishop captures on h4, and now rook to e1. Bishop to e3 is a bit more popular, but okay, rook to e1, and pawn to h5 by HANS. Now, interestingly, MVL does have a couple of games in the database in this exact same position. For example, he played it against Levon Aronian. Aronian continued with pawn to b6 here, and MVL won this position with white. Also, he played against Alexander Grishuk. Grishuk played pawn to a5. That game, on the other hand, ended in a draw. So it's hard to say how much of this HANS knows, but they are still playing very quickly. You can see that they basically spend a second each. So okay, pawn to h5, and now knight to e4. This is a new move. h5 has been met with knight to e2 a couple of times, but never with knight to e4, and it is now as of move 13 that we have a completely new game. Okay, bishop to f5, the continuing development, attacking the knight, knight to g5, going after the f7 pawn, and king to e8, just nicely defending. We have pawn to e6, and bishop captures on g5. You can't really be tricky with pawn to f6 because that position is just terrible for black. The knight can go back, you attack the bishop, and well, it doesn't matter what you do. The knight then comes to d4. This bishop gets attacked. It is just too much to give to white. So instead, bishop captures on g5. E captures on f7, king captures, and bishop captures on g5. And now just rook h to e8, and through some shrewd maneuvering, HANS was able to develop his pieces properly, and the position is now considered to be equal. Bishops are of opposite color, so you know it can be a fight, but it can also be a very quick draw. We have pawn to c3, and rook captures on e1. Rook captures, and now rook to e8. So, okay, Maxime is playing a little bit faster. Maybe he knows the variation a little bit better, but nothing too spectacular. We have bishop back to e3, and rook to d8, inviting bishop captures on a7, but here capturing on a7 would be a bit too much. You can just play b6, and now the rook is too fast. Rook to a8 will just trap the bishop. But here king to h2 was played. We have bishop to e6, and now pawn to a3, and HANS boldly goes with rook to d5. So now if bishop captures on a7, you do not have the immediate rook to a8 once you trap the bishop with b6. And MVL says, all right, let's see what you got. We have bishop captures on a7, b6, bishop to b8, now going after the c7 pawn, but now not defending the pawn, but rather rook to d2. This is how HANS is trying to make progress. With bishop captures on c7, rook captures on f2, bishop captures on b6, attacking the rook, and rook captures on b2. We have bishop to d4, and rook to a2. So now you can see that as the bishops are of opposite color, HANS will most certainly put pressure on that g2 pawn, and MVL will do his best to put pressure on that g7 pawn, if the rook is on g3 or even defending the g2 pawn. So it definitely makes sense. Rook to f1 check, king to g6, rook to f3, and pawn to h4, stopping rook to g3, but it does leave the h4 pawn a bit vulnerable. So rook to f4 by MVL and bishop to d5, defending with a tactic. If the rook does not defend on g2, then you're just going to capture it. So rook g4 check, king to f5. If you go anywhere else, rook captures on g7 will just be winning for MVL. So king to f5, and now the question is what to play here. I could tell you what's a good move for white, because there are a couple of them that still keep the position equal, but there is one that Maxime played that simply does not work. He played bishop captures on g7, and this doesn't work for a very, very specific reason. Feel free to pause the video and win the game for Hans while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this tricky idea. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is bishop to f3. This is what Hans played, and it was in this position on move 32 that MVL resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. The rook has no squares on the g file, which means you have to move the rook, and the rook captures on g2 is coming. This cannot be played. Of course, the g pawn is pinned, and you really don't have a good move. Bishop captures on g7 just blocked your own rook, so that's very unfortunate. And the idea is that once you move the rook away from the g file, just rook captures on g2 check. And now some windmill action. Rook captures bishop on g7 with a discovery. King goes back, rook to g2 check. Again, you go back, rook to g4. Another discovery. King h2, simply trade, and you're just up a full piece, of course, completely winning. So yeah, very nicely done by Hans, not allowing MVL to phase him out with this well, a very, very known line. But yeah, it was a very nice game. Like I said, it could be that he was prepared for it very well, as Maxime does play this line. So yeah, who knows. And also now I wanted to show you this one where Hans has the white pieces, and this one it's even shorter, but it's really, really nice. We have pawn to e4 by Hans, c5, MVL goes for the Sicilian defense, knight f3, knight to c6, and now bishop to b5, going for the Nimzovich-Rossolimo attack, g6, and now bishop captures on c6, b captures and castles kingside. It's okay, you mess up black's pawn structure, but you allow black to maintain the bishop pair. Bishop to g7, rook to e1, and queen to c7. And now c3 is customary here, preparing pawn to d4, but we have knight to a3. It's not unheard of. Alireza did play it against Hikaru Nakamura. Hikaru countered it with a flank move by the knight by himself. He played knight to h6. Their game ended in a draw. But this game we have pawn to d5 by MVL, d3, and now knight to f6, putting more pressure on the e4 pawn. And now there is a game where h3 was played. We have pawn to e5, and it is now as of move 9 that we have a completely new game. Okay, knight to g4, putting pressure on the e5 pawn, and it's incredible that knight to g4 is already, we could say at this level, a game-losing blunder. You have to play knight to d7. It's similar but not the same. Okay, you are now attacking this pawn 3 times, but bishop to f4, and now pawn to h5, defending the knight, and you could kick away the knight with h3, but queen to d2, and now queen to b6, attacks the b2 pawn, rook 8 to b1, and pawn to a5. So what is the big problem with black's position here? Well, c3. What do you play with black? Pawn to a4. We have knight to c2, getting the knight into the game this way, and knight to h6, preparing to bring the knight over to f5, knight to g5, knight to f5, and now pawn to h3. And there really isn't a good move here for black. In the game, MVL castled, but this runs into pawn to e6. Pawn to f6 here works, unlike in the previous game. Knight back to f3, and now pawn to g5, attacking the bishop. Bishop to h2, and now queen to d8. You have to be ready, because you know an attack is coming on the king side. This completely blockades the position. The bishop is out of the game. You cannot get the rooks into the game. This pawn setup is disgusting. And you know it wouldn't be unheard of to sacrifice here, open up the position, maybe the rook gets into the game. So pawn to d4 was played, and now you should play pawn to c4. This still keeps the game going, although it's very hard to play it for black. But in the game, pawn to g4 was played, which plays right into Hans's hands. He wants to open up the position, but maybe it's not all that clear. Feel free to pause the video and try to find the best move while I give you a couple of seconds. Yes, the move is exactly the move you thought of first, and that is queen to f4. It doesn't matter. You could also capture on g4, captures, and then play queen to f4, but queen to f4 is the idea. The problem is this knight has no squares. It is just a terrible knight. You could go to d6. Okay, that is possible, but then just h captures, knight to h4, and it's, well, you still don't have any good squares. You can never get rid of the e6 pawn. The knight has no way of doing anything important here. You could go here, but then queen captures on g4. The knight comes to f5. It's just game over. Another thing the knight could do is come to h6, but then the immediate knight h4, and after whatever you play, let's say bishop to a6, just a nice queen to d2, and there's no defense against bishop f4. You're just going to lose that knight because the knight has no squares. So after queen to f4, okay, MVL tried g captures on f3, now comes queen captures on f5, and f captures on g2, and now, of course, the move you guys thought of first, rook to e3, and he was in this position on move 23 that MVL resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Looks like there should be something to be done here, but no, the pawn on e6 is such a huge bone in black's throat that I mean, there's no way getting around this. Rook to g3 is coming, and that's pretty much it. Whatever we play, let's say c captures on d4, or rook g3. Now threatening queen g6, queen captures on g7, and even if you stop that, you can only stop it for so long. Knight captures on d4, and again, what do you play? If you c5, you just go knight to b5. Even if bishop here is still knight to b5, because there's no defense. Knight to c7 is coming. You don't care about the rook, but there's no way for black to stop you. This is also covered by the knight, and now whatever you play, just knight c7 kicks away the queen from the defense of the g6 square, and that's it. Once the queen moves, queen g6, queen captures on g7 is coming. Giving up the rook will not help you. Just e captures on f7, queen g7 checkmate. So yeah. Very, very nicely done by Hans Moke Niemann, taking down well, a spectacular player like MVL. And these are the standings. Sorry, it's a bit cut off. Let me just get rid of this. So MVL actually won the 5+1 section with a 4.5 to 3.5. Then Hans retaliated in the 3+1 section, winning 5.5 to 2.5. And then MVL also won the bullet section 4.5 to 3.5. And in the end, Hans won by a 1 point margin due to the well, fairly exemplary score in the 3+1 section. So it was a very close fight, but in the end, Hans was triumphant. And these are all of the pairings. So we have all of our quarterfinalists now. Magnus will face Arjun, Hans will face Wesley So, Alireza will face Fabi, and Nakamura will face Yanni Pomnishi. So, okay, what are your predictions? Who will win those, and who will we have in the semifinals? So yeah, that's the game, or rather those were the games. Hope you guys enjoyed them. I would like to thank Vicky Hackney, Meadow the Super Chess Dog, Darren Little, Jerry Drever, and the Animated Chemist for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.